Well, if you think our society is becoming angrier and more aggressive, you're not alone. 3 in 4 Aussies believe we are becoming more like that. And the reasons, well, there's quite a few been listed, in fact. Drugs and alcohol, money worries. This is about 40% of people in the NAB Wellbeing Index thought that that's probably why we are so angry and aggressive. Social norms and values are changing. The rise of social media, which is one Chris and I thought was pretty interesting. And work and job worries, 24% saying that's possibly to blame.
Yeah, so this is our starting off point for tonight's Taking Stock. We're very lucky tonight. We're joined by John Rolfe from News Corp, our
Cost of living editor.
Cost of living editor. Thank you, Brooke.
Maybe I shouldn't be smiling.
You probably come by many.
Maybe you should be, but exactly. But we're also joined by.
He's too nice. You can't be angry. He's such a nice guy.
We're also joined by Shivani Gopal, CEO of The Remarkable Woman. Thank you both very much. It was interesting, wasn't it? This sort of this NAB data. Shivani, did it reflect the way you feel? Do you think everyone's getting angrier, more aggressive?
I certainly think people are getting more irritated and less patient. I mean, think about how much more convenient our lives are getting. Think about tap and go. And every time you go to a place that they don't have tap and go, you think, oh, goodness, really? Do I actually have to wait here and type in my PIN number? That is going to waste my precious 20 seconds, and that's going to have me really irritated. So interestingly enough, I would add, technology and convenience to that list, because it actually does make us more irritated, which therefore leads to us getting more angry. And yeah, look, I've got to quite agree with the data as well around social media. Has anyone ever heard this quote that we're consistently comparing our ordinary lives? I've doctored this a bit, by the way, because I couldn't remember it word for word. But we're living our ordinary lives in comparison to someone else's highlight reel. And so you're sitting there at home and you're probably feeling a little bit crummy about yourself, scrolling through Instagram, look at all these beautiful people. I mean, makes you feel kind of angry, irritated, a little bit, bad about yourself. So it's no surprise that anxiety is on the rise.
Yep, that's social media right there.
So it's all the Kardashians' fault.
Yeah.
Make me angry.
AKA anxiety, anger.
In so many ways, so many ways.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
Look, I find it's creeping into my life. I've got absolutely nothing to be genuinely angry about. Yet every day I'll find something. The kids have bumped the wall and there's another mark, but what difference does it make? It goes along with the other 50. I've just got to get over it. And I think we all need to get over it a little bit. I think that the social media comparison, the fast-paced, increasingly fast-paced lifestyle that we lead, you see it on the roads. No one's prepared to wait in their lane anymore. We've got everyone sort of, traffic filtering. We can't even go out and order McDonald's anymore. I think we've all become too lazy, too self-absorbed, and yeah, we just got angry.
Yeah.
It's a grim assessment. Look, I get it. This is what the data said. I mean, it was actually a small part of a bigger report on well-being, which was really interesting because it also looked at who is doing the best, who's happiest in our society. And it was interesting to see that it was the highest for widows, over 50s, married people, and people who live in their own home that they own. And it was obviously lowest for single people, people between 18 and 29, and renters. So, Shivani, I mean, there's a lot of kind of drivers of our overall well-being in there. Kind of seems to be our age, our relationship status, and whether or not we own our house. Is that kind of about right? Is that what you expected?
Yeah, it is about right. I think some of the sage advice that I was given when I very early on in my career was there were 3 things you need to get right in your life: your work, your relationships, and your health. And if you do, you're going to have a pretty happy life. And if you think about the areas that have been pointed out in this report, you're looking at relationships, whether you're married or not, so you've got someone comforting and loving to come home to, and whether or not you own your own home, so you feel a sense of security. That's really interesting. The other interesting thing that I thought was in that report was income that was being earned as well. So if you're earning around 100 grand, you're generally happy. Now, coincide that with some other studies that are done that look at, if you earn between $100,000 and $120,000, you're happy. If you earn an extra $100,000 on top of that, you aren't any more happy. In fact, you're likely to be more miserable.
Jeez, that's a fine balance.
Has very much to do with happiness. They're just the right amount to get by, yes, but not too much.
Yeah.
To me, I think if you're at home, you've got some company and you're watching this channel, it sounds like that's the recipe to success.
The highest well-being.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's funny what you were saying before as well about the things in your life you get annoyed at and just think, I actually think social media is to thank for the hashtag first world problems. Like, I often, many times in a day, I'll get cranky about something and think, first world problem, move on. And, before social media and Twitter particularly, I didn't have that hashtag in my brain. I draw on that quite often, I reckon.
It's good. It's good to have those sorts of touch points to remind yourself that things aren't that bad. I mean, no one's dying of incurable diseases in my household. I've got to stop getting so worried about every little thing.
And by the way, petrol prices are at decade lows. We apparently all worry about petrol prices. That comes up in your job a lot, John.
Well,
we've got that off our list, hopefully, for now.
I think last time I was in, I was going to come back and offer some advice on how to beat big oil. Well, it sorted itself out while I was away. I see the French aren't too happy about it, but I did a bit of a comparison today, and I think that we're paying something like US $2 a gallon less than they do, about $3.70 versus $5.70. So if we get back up to those sorts of levels, maybe Aussies will be out protesting in the street too, but the French seem to do it so well.
Oh, yeah, they do, don't they? They like to be angry.
Yeah. They seem to
they do it so passionately.
Yeah, well, exactly. Nothing better than passion in life, I reckon. Royal Commission today, this was an interesting one because every time we've talked about this, we've kind of had this joke, another day at the Royal Commission, another apology. And it all started today with Rowena all saying, this is not a day to hear apologies, which is pretty interesting. What do you think? Is this a big moment? Have we finally turned the corner, guys?
Rowena had the private school headmistress thing going on, and the whole thing looked like the Judge Judy's People's Court to me today. But look, to me, if they weren't apologising, we'd be complaining that they weren't apologising. And if we rewind back to the start of this, when the Commonshaw scandal hit the fan, they didn't apologise.
Yes.
They took, a small target approach, sent the Chief Counsel down to Canberra to try and deal with the problem. Ian Narev was nowhere to be seen. Well, he's out the door now. Yep. Sure, Matt Comyn was in charge of the retail bank, but as came out at the Royal Commission today, he was warning about some of the shortcomings in what they were doing. So I think that the apology from him is sincere, but I also agree with the counsel assisting that the time for apologising is over and the rubber needs to hit the road. And if it doesn't, I think it's going to cost them where it really hurts at a bank, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah,
interesting, isn't it?
We're already seeing the fallout.
We hear a lot of apologies from whether it's big business or even kind of influential people. Whether it's a cricketer who's done the wrong thing. That's right, a politician. So I mean, Shivani, what do you think? Do you think we're seeing a bit of fatigue with that in Australia?
I think it's a definition of insanity with any kind of apology. If you're going to keep apologising for the same thing over and over again, people really get over it. and they just want to hear, I always say to, my friends and family, particularly my husband, so hopefully he's not watching today, I don't want to hear, that you're sorry. I want to hear why you're sorry and all the things behind
tough
it.
line. I like it. I like
people understand. And this is why apologies are so laden with booby traps, because in big corporate apologies, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? If you are far too genuine and you go out and you say why you're sorry and all the things that went wrong, you're opening yourself up to litigation. So you'll find very few CEOs will actually do that. And when they don't, they come across as awfully wooden. So talking about Ian Narev again and that Commonshaw issue, if you think back to the Four Corners episode where he's talking about, why Commonshaw behaved the way they did and why CBA took their approach, he came across as incredibly disingenuous. Now, he may not be that way in real life, but when he came across like that, people were just poking issues out at left, right and centre, and they had to, because he just wasn't getting to the root cause of why they didn't pay out the claims and how that was truly quite unfair for for some of these claimants. So I think apologies are a very dangerous territory, and I think that people just want to start moving on to, okay, why are you sorry? Taking that family approach, and how can you assure me that's not going to happen next time?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right, because when you get an apology from a loved one or something, you can deal with it and move on. But if it feels so disconnected when it's one of these kind of banking giants, and I mean, we see this a lot. Remember a while ago, there was the big oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, and the BP CEO came out and said sorry so many times that it became like a skit. It became comical. So, I mean, are we done with this, John? What do you think?
Oh, it's a bit like having a conversation with a 6-year-old, isn't it? They say sorry and they think, well, that absolves them of everything that has transpired to that point. I do have one explanation for why Ian Narev was so reluctant, perhaps to say sorry. Maybe he wasn't.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't genuine, and so maybe he wasn't convinced that Combank did all that much wrong. I think that
we had a discussion earlier with Leo, who's been at the Royal Commission today, and he said, at that time, Matt Comyn really didn't feel that it was a culture problem, or it certainly didn't express that he thought that it was a culture problem. This is Ian Narev, sorry. Ian Narev, he never kind of admitted to that. Now, you know, this is common today, basically saying it is a culture problem. So, yeah, maybe he didn't actually believe it.
It feels like a bit like an old Peter Beattie, the Queensland Premier, a tactic that he used to use, which he'd come out and he'd be really angry about something that the government had done. Well, he was running it.
Yeah, that's right.
So who was he angry at? So for me, Matt Common, you know, he was in line. He was next in line to the throne. It's one thing for him to apologise, but he was there. He was part of it, and it's incumbent upon him to take action to ensure that the next CEO isn't still apologising for these mistakes.
Yes, exactly.
John, switching gears now quite significantly, because I want to finish about Christmas. It's as we heard, it's
Chris loved this one today.
I did. I really loved it. 5 weeks away. So just let me do it, all right?
Go.
So we found out that there's apparently a cheapest and a most expensive day to buy a Christmas tree. And this is pretty shameless clickbait, and I'm not particularly proud of what I'm about to say, but apparently the cheapest day to buy a Christmas tree before Christmas is Christmas Eve.
Yes.
But of course you turn around and say, well, what's the point of that? Because by Boxing Day it's old. So this kind of got us talking in the newsroom about ways to save money at Christmas time. Is it worth even having a go at this? We hear that there's something like $1,300 spent on Christmas gifts. Where do you cut costs, if anywhere, when it comes to Christmas, John? Thoughts?
Well, I think the Christmas Eve Christmas tree is a great idea, and you know, and why do you have to get rid of it after just one Christmas? It's only 365 days to the next one. A bit of green spray paint, and I also offer another solution. If you're not that into Christmas, I'm reminded of George Costanza from Seinfeld's father, Frank, and his festival, Festivus, the festival for the rest of us. And all you need then is a steel pole and air your grievances. You don't even need gifts.
Oh my God.
Marty, chance?
Yeah, how do you even respond to that? Brilliant, but I love Christmas. So to me, you're the Christmas Grinch. Thank you very much. I think, you know, to wait until Christmas Eve to do a Christmas tree is, you know, a little bit, you know, besides the point. So, so definitely, you know, go out there. I, for one, love Christmas. My cat loves my Christmas tree more than I do, and he has a whole bunch of fun. So we're all, you know, always putting back the Christmas tree back up. And I think you can have a lot of fun with the amount of money that you spend, and just think about, okay, look, if you've got kids, then probably buy the kids presents, because you know the beauty of unwrapping the gift is just magical. I remember doing that. I also remember the price tags on my stockings when I realised, and that was the time that I realised that Santa Claus isn't really, you know, isn't really true, because I doubt he shopped at Big W.
You don't think Santa Claus shops at Big W?
Yeah.
Last-minute gifts.
We didn't say anything though, so we continue to get stocking gifts as well as Christmas presents. But I think what's wonderful is you can actually share your time and you know, bake something and take it over, and I think that's a wonderful gift, and it's a great way to save money as well.
Well, I'm a real cheapskate, because I had to reveal it to Chris today. I got a second-hand fake Christmas tree about 8 years ago, and I roll it out every year.
See, that's the thing we didn't even talk about, is the fake ones.
Does it have any leaves left? I mean, is it still going strong?
Oh, look, it's strong enough. Because about 4 years ago, I lost the real versus fake Christmas tree debate, which is, you know, like, I always like a real Christmas tree, but it's too much hassle.
My father-in-law, he's having a bit of a clean out at the moment, and I might relieve him of his Christmas tree.
Get a second-hand Christmas tree. That's the best way to save money. Thank you, guys. Good to see you. Great fun. And look, bringing up Seinfeld, you're always going to win that argument by doing that. Thank you, John. Thank you, Shivani.